Europe is talking about sending British and French troops to Ukraine as a part of peace plan. American backstop of weapons, intel, maybe even air defense, and now China pops up saying they might send their own peacekeepers too. Meanwhile, Putin's version of peace looks a bit different. Ukraine gives up all of Donbass, drops NATO forever, and bans Western troops from even stepping foot here. I'm Maria Drutska, and let's dive into the latest news from the week. So, European officials on Tuesday discussed a plan to send British and European and French troops to Ukraine as a part of peace agreement, including the number and roles of personnel, says Bloomberg, citing informed sources. Well, according to the package of guarantees under development, the first stage involves strengthening Ukraine's forces through training and reinforcement, the source said to this media outlet. These forces would be supported by a multinational group, mainly European troops, with the UK and France ready to send hundreds of soldiers to be stationed in Ukraine, away from the front line, of course. And the next stage, an American backstop, which could mean intelligence sharing, surveillance, weapons, and possibly air defense. Although, of course, the exact nature of US support remains vague. While European leaders called the White House meeting a breakthrough, several officials admitted they remain skeptical that the guarantees would be enough to deter Russia. Meanwhile, the UK's Chief of the Defence Staff, Tony Radakin, is expected as the Pentagon to finalize commitments from 30 countries on Ukraine's security. According to The Guardian, Radakin is said to confirm that the UK will provide troops for logistics and trainings, but won't dare deploy them near Russia. At one point, talks of 30,000 troops to secure Ukrainian cities floated around, but that was quickly downsized due to pushback from some European countries. A British official told the paper Radakin would echo the promises on Defense Secretary John Healey, who last weekend declared that the UK was ready to send troops to Ukraine to ensure safe skies, safe seas, and strengthen Ukrainian forces. But here is a contradiction. Reuters write that Putin's peace demands are a bit different. Well, namely, Ukraine must give up all of Donbass, abandon NATO aspirations, stay neutral forever, and ban Western troops from ever stepping foot in the country. Well, in fact, three sources told Reuters that Russia's latest proposal still demands full withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the remaining parts of Donbass in exchange for Moscow halting its advances in Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. Give me everything in your house, and I promise not to burn down your garage yet. Well, according to US estimates and open source data, Russia currently controls around 88% of Donbass and 73% of Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. Moscow is reportedly also willing to hand back small parts of Kharkiv, Sumy, and Dnipro regions it currently controls. How generous, Jesus. And of course, Putin insists that Ukraine must drop NATO forever and NATO must legally promise never to expand eastward. He also wants limits on the Ukrainian army and a pledge that Western troops won't be deployed in Ukraine even as peacekeepers. Meanwhile, Sergei Lavrov has been busy with his, usual verbal gymnastics. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs announced that Moscow must have a say in Ukraine's security guarantees, and maybe China should too. And yesterday he suddenly declared Putin won't meet Zelensky since Ukraine supposedly rejected the peace proposals discussed at the Alaska summit. Well, NBC News even caught Lavrov on camera snapping at it. And the reporter, you can see the video on my Twitter page that I will leave a link in the description below. And yesterday Lavrov added that Putin would meet Zelensky, but only once there is an agenda. Spoiler, as there is no other agenda than Ukraine must surrender. The Ukrainian president also actually slapped back on Lavrov's bizarre idea that Russia should be a part of Ukraine's security guarantees. Standing next to NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in Kiev yesterday, Zelensky said, Ukraine needs security guarantees, so we, our children, our grandchildren, know Russia won't attack us. There are guarantees against the aggressor, Russia. And when Russia talks about security guarantees, honestly, he said, I don't know who is threatening them. They attack us. And he said, I don't understand what guarantees the aggressor could possibly need. What do you think, guys? Who is threatening Russia? Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports that President Trump's efforts to broker peace in Russia-Ukraine war have hit a dead end. His dream of a grand summit with Putin and Zelensky to sign a peace deal apparently also disappearing. On Monday, Trump bragged about quick peace agreement. By Thursday, he was declaring that Kiev had no chance of winning the war without striking Russia directly, while also taking a swipe at Biden. Some bloggers jumped on this, claiming that Trump was secretly giving Ukraine the green light to strike Russia, like, some hidden announcement. Spoiler, no. If anything, it sounded like him stating that the obvious, Ukraine can't win by just defending. And unlike Biden's, we will give you weapons, but only later in smaller doses, and only sometimes you can use them on Russia, sometimes not policy. Trump wasn't offering weapons at all. Ukraine survived thanks to US aid. Yes, but surviving is not really mean winning. So no, Trump wasn't signaling a game changer. He was just pointing out the obvious. The shift in tone underscored how Trump's peace push has already lost steam. His plan trying to get Putin and Zelensky together looks like collapsed too. Negotiators still floated the idea of peacekeeping forces to keep Moscow from reinvading, but the Kremlin sorted that away faster than you can say "niet." Former aides know that Trump wings it, learning on personal charm. Putin, meanwhile, plays the long game, cold, methodological, and calculating that his army slowly green forward while so-called talks drag on. Oh, and about that very important announcement Trump did yesterday, turned out to be mostly about the 2026 World Cup. Mid-speech, he suddenly waved a photo of Putin and mused, I think Vladimir Putin will come to the World Cup, maybe not, depending on what happens. He might not, he may, but I think it's a nice photo, he said, very nice photo. Honestly, how many 2 weeks promises have we heard from Trump in the past 7 months? Drop me your count in the comments, please. And do you really think he will roll out the red carpet for Putin for the game? Because some of my ex-followers suggested that he is giving the carrots to Putin. But let's be real, Putin doesn't do carrots, he plays for the jackpot. Imagine him sitting front row at the World Cup in New York next to Trump, while missiles are still slamming into Ukrainian cities and, by the way, into American companies in Ukraine. Yes, the day before, a Russian strike hit the US appliance factory in Mukachevo, western Ukraine, right near NATO's borders. Asked about it, Trump said he was very unhappy and with it and with war, and repeated the same tune. If I were president, that wouldn't happen, and it's Biden's fault, and stuff like that. Well, according to a White House source, Trump believes Ukraine will eventually have to accept a deal mostly on Moscow's terms. His logic is that Russia upper hand as Ukraine relies on US weapons and intel that's leverage Washington can use to push Kiev towards concessions. That message Trump posted about how it's impossible to win without striking the aggressor wasn't permission or something, it was pressure actually. Meanwhile, yesterday, Ukrainian drones hit a Transneft Druzhba oil pumping station in Bryansk in Russia. Hungary's foreign minister Peter Siarta immediately whined that Russian oil delivery stopped. Poland's foreign minister Sikorsky trolled him on Twitter. Peter, you will get as much solidarity from us as we got from you, he said. Well, other diplomats piled on. I actually love this Twitter diplomacy, you know. And speaking about comedy, Russia's fuel crisis is snowballing. Shortages are spreading across regions. The Kremlin is rationing gasoline, begging Belarus for extra supplies. It's hit occupied Crimea, the Far East, even the Kuril Island. As of August 20th, locals are allowed 10 liters per person, and special services and rescue agencies get priority, of course, and ordinary Russians are just stuck in lines. So, yes, the mighty empire is running on fumes, quite literally, and let's not forget the most effective sanctions are still delivered from the skies, from Ukrainian biolab mosquitoes, you know. And while we are on trade, something going wrong between Russia and China. After 3 years of booming business, their trade is actually shrinking. The Russian trade minister himself admitted it. From January to July 2025, trade fell by 8%. That's $125.8 billion and dropping. For comparison, not so long ago, Moscow and Beijing were bragging about doubling trade, and now China cut purchase of Russian crude oil by 11%, petroleum products by 28%, LNG by 13%, and even wood and coal by 10%. And only things going up is pipeline gas and industrial metals. So much for the friendship without limits. Looks like those limits have been reached, probably, or what? And by the way, speaking of China, according to Welt, Beijing is ready to send troops to Ukraine as a part of a peacekeeping mission, but only if it's under UN mandate. Now, we have heard similar rumors back in March, which Beijing quickly denied, saying it was completely untrue. Well, Brussels, of course, is skeptical. On the one hand, Global South involvement, China included, could add legitimacy to a peacekeeping forces. On the other hand, well, let's be honest, China's peacekeepers could easily double as spies, for example. And if push, started the war again, etc., they would not be neutral, they could take Russia's side. Of course, Russia would love Chinese boots in Ukraine, but Zelensky has already said no thanks. Why? Because China, he said, has been helping Russia from drones to market access. And let's not forget, he said, Budapest Memorandum. China was one of the signatories. And when Russia took Crimea in 2014, they did nothing. Absolutely nothing. But let's be fair, the other guarantors didn't exactly rush to save us either. But as Zelensky said the other day, Ukraine doesn't need guarantors who stay silent when you need them most, especially, of course, after February 24, 2022. And here's something else interesting I read. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has fired Jeffrey Cruz, head of the Pentagon's Defense Intelligence Agency, because his initial assessment of the damage to Iran's nuclear facilities after US strikes apparently angered President Trump. That dismissal came as a shock to the US military and intelligence community, and it happened just months after leaks to the press showed that Iran's nuclear program had only been delayed by a few months, contrary to the triumphant claims of Trump and Netanyahu. Inside the Pentagon, the official line is the good old loss of confidence in that person, and reported knows that Hexet has already used this phrase multiple times to fire other high-ranking officials, which raises a question. Is it about putting his people in key posts, which is likely, or it is proof of serious disagreement over strategy? What do you guys think? My American friends especially. Sounds pretty believable. Leave me a comment below, because in Ukraine, as you know, such appointments and firing are almost routine, so honestly I'm not surprised, but it is a little bit concerning when it involves national security, as such senior professionals are leaving. So drop your comments, what you think. I read them all, it's really interesting for me. So that's it for today. I want to thank all of you for supporting Ukraine, watching Ukrainian content. Please like this video, and you can support the channel's development on Patreon or buy me a coffee. The empire will fall. See you soon, and Slava Ukraini!